Hi, and welcome to the panel discussion, The Future of the Alps. My name is Conny Kavul. I am the co-president of Glacierwatch. Glacierwatch is the organization that wants to make information and data about the glaciers in Europe accessible to everybody, especially the glaciers and how they're faring during our climate crisis. Today, we will talk about the future of the Alps. We want to bring together various different voices and perspectives on how the climate crisis affects the Alps and the Alpine glaciers. We will look at the past, the present, and the future. The Alps, of course, are a unique world, a place where the elements of nature come together in a breathtaking ensemble. We will find majestic mountains and beautiful peaks there, glaciers, landscapes of rock and ice, green meadows, and clear brooks. A landscape that invites creativity, that beckons to be imagined, and a landscape that is quickly changing. We see melting glaciers, we see rock falls, we see mudslides, we see over-tourism and pollution. Will the glaciers of the future still capture our imagination as the Alps of the past have done? We will ask these questions and many more in this panel discussion, a panel discussion that I'm very, very happy to tell you will be moderated by no other than Leslie Coutterand, who is a French filmmaker, a speaker, public speaker, and an actress, and who is coming from us from Chamonix in the region of Mont Blanc in the French Alps. And she will be the moderator for us for the next 1.5 hours. I'm very happy to give now over to Leslie. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for everyone organizing this wonderful panel. This is a topic that is pretty much needed, I think. And it's when I talk about glacier in general, a lot of people don't really know what we're talking about. And I think it's a wonderful way to amaze people because it's a full world of surprise when we get into it, but also it's a necessary one because we all depend on glaciers. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion on the future of glaciers in the Alps. As you know, the glaciers are the most visible sign of climate change. It's something that we can actually see every day when we're in the mountains, but also if you look at pictures on the internet, you will easily see the impact of climate change, despite what some people would say on the internet. So just a few words. I'm extremely honored to moderate this panel. I am also working on a documentary about the future of glaciers around the world and the consequences it will have on us humans. And also my goal is to make everyone fall in love with glaciers. So I couldn't be happier to be here today, especially with our guest and who will talk about many things today. So thank you everyone for being here. So since 1850, I'm going to start with a few numbers so we know exactly where we're heading and what is the situation. So since 1850, the Alps have already lost about 60% of their ice volume, which is a huge amount in less than 200 years. The pace is accelerating dramatically. And scientists now project the potential disappearance of nearly all glaciers below 3,500 meters by 2050. There is approximately 5,000 glaciers in the Alps, which is a lot if you're passionate and you want to take a look at all of them. You have many, many, many evening plans to check the pictures or to plan some hikes to go take some photos. The longest glacier in the Alps is the Aletsch Glacier. It's around 22 kilometers long, and it's roughly it's one of the most impressive glacier personally for me in Europe. We also have about 170 million people in Europe who depend on alpine glaciers as natural reservoirs. These glaciers, they feed major river systems, including the Rhine, the Rhone, the Po, Danube, and especially during dry summer months when up to 80% of downstream water can originate from glacial melt. And as glaciers retreat, we face, as our guest said, we face a future of increased water scarcity and also mudslide and other catastrophes in the mountains, but also hydropower challenges and diminishing water resources. So today for this panel, we'll also talk about these magnificent landscapes and how they inspired our guest, an expert, and how they made them fall in love as well with the mountains and why they're so engaged in their work, in their expertise, or in their daily lives to save these beautiful glaciers and not let them transform as fast as they are transforming right now before our eyes. So tonight with our guests, we will explore crucial questions. We'll talk about tourism, winter sport, the impact of glaciers melting on outdoor activities. We'll talk about the past, we'll talk about the present, but we'll also dig into inspirations and solutions for the future. So I'm delighted to introduce our experts who bring diverse perspectives to this vital conversation. So to start, we have Michele. I'm just going to say something. My accent with German, Austrian, or Italian names is not good. So please let me know if I am butchering your name. I will apologize and try to do better. So with us, we have Michele di Biase, who is Italian, PhD student in polar sciences, specializing in glaciology. His research focuses on the relationship between deglaciation risk and glacier monitoring through remote sensing. He represents the Servizio Glaciologico Lombardo, where he monitors glaciers throughout Lombardy, giving him first-hand insight into the changes occurring in the Italian Alps. Hello, Michele. Nice
Hi,
to see you.
nice to
Let
meet
me
you.
know
Yeah,
how to say your name in the most beautiful
Michele.
Italian way so I can apologize.
It's Michele.
Michele. I
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
something was up.
Yeah, it was more French. Yeah, no.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Welcome.
you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here with you and to represent my association in this
Thank you.
international event. And it's very nice for us to extend our I would say out of Italian border.
Thank you so much. So next we'll also have Dr. Tobias. Tobias in English, Tobias Hipp.
Tobias.
Tobias. Tobias Hipp. You serve as an environmental protection and scientist advisor at Deutscher Alpenverein. Am I
Yeah,
better with that?
almost. Yeah, yeah.
The German Alpine Club, where you lead environmental impact assessments, manages international initiatives, and represent the club interest on the Alpine Climate Board. Also combine scientific expertise with advocacy through research projects, media campaigns, and educational workshops focused on environmental conservation, climate adaptation, and sustainable mobility in the mountain regions. So welcome.
Thanks for the invitation. Sounds like a lot now on the list.
It does sound like a lot, but this is why we need you. So thank you
Yeah,
for being
exactly.
with
So
us.
we're, as many know, maybe the German Alpine Club or any other Alpine Club, we're sort of in the zone between leisure, free time activity, mountaineering, sports, and environmental conservation, sustainability. So we're working in that field, which is very interesting because we need to find a way forward, including all the sectors. But it's also challenging. And obviously, we have, as a mountaineer, we have a very emotional, direct connection to ice.
And I think it's a good thing to have this emotional connection. I wish we all had it. So we also have with us Tobias Büttel, who brings an artistic and documentary perspective as an alpine photographer. He has dedicated his work to documenting our melting alpine glaciers. Also invite everyone to check his website to see his work and the pictures. His mission is twofold, so to preserve images of what we're losing for future generations and to raise awareness that drives climate action through the power of visual storytelling. So welcome, Tobias, and I don't know if Tobias is with us
Yes,
right
I
now
am.
in the room. Here we go. Hi, Tobias. I think you just missed the moment where I completely destroyed your last name. So it's a good
No, I
thing.
didn't miss
You
it.
won't be mad at me.
It's Büttel.
Büttel.
It's a German name. Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for having
much
me.
for
So
being with
nice.
us.
Really excited.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have with us Anna Zirner, who rounds out our panel as an author, mountaineer, and certified hiking guide known for remarkable solo journeys through the mountains. I also saw on the internet that she used to produce and do some documentaries. She was raised in the Alps, and Anna brings not only her passion for multi-day treks and summit tours, but also a perspective as vice president of Protector Winters, which is an incredible organization that we'll talk about it furthermore during the panel, where she fights for sustainable mountaineering and connects athletes with climate activism. Hello, Anna. Welcome.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah,
Hi.
definitely I'm here for POW first and foremost.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. So our discussion tonight will take us through three key chapters. First, we'll explore the history of the Alpine glaciology and the Alps as a place of desire and dreams. Next, we'll confront the present reality, and we'll also talk about the impact of climate change on tourism, outdoor sports, the wildlife, and ourselves humans. And also we'll look to, in the last part, we'll look forward to the future, and we'll ask ourselves what we can still do, what we can do to preserve the glaciers, and how we can enjoy the Alps differently in a sustainable and respectful way, where humans and nature can actually collaborate. Well, more human can collaborate with nature because nature didn't wait for us to know how to do the job. So to start this panel, I would ask all of you if you can just raise your hand or start talking if you want. I think the Zoom will bring you to the forefront if you start talking. What's your first memory with glacier? How old were you when you heard the first time about glaciers, or saw one, or maybe heard about it in a story?
Well, there's not one single one for me, because I started like ski touring or skiing, climbing as a young kid, as soon as I can walk, more or less, from my parents and my dad. But I do remember having like National Geographic magazines around me that my dad had, and saw ice. And I just remember my first, just a hike on, I think it was on the Pasterze at the Glockner, just a walk on this flat ice surface as a kid. So and then obviously there's a lot more memories that followed until now as a mountaineering activity.
Interesting. Is there anyone in our experts who discovered glaciers later on in life, or are we all, me included, from the mountains and got the glaciers in our bloods?
More or less, I can say something like this, because my first experience on a glacier or near a glacier was on a Pasterze Glacier in Grossglockner when I was in middle school. But I didn't realize that I was near a glacier, and I didn't understand the properties of it, the geomorphology of a glacier. And then my passion for glacier raised out during the university, while I was attending a class. And there was a professor that showed us a photographical comparison of a glacier a few years ago and then now. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't like this situation, but I like this kind of studies. So that's what I would like to do in my life. Then I started to learn something more about glaciology, and then I also became a member of the Servizio Glaciologico, the Lombardian Glaciological Committee, and then here I am doing a PhD in glaciology. So my passion for glaciology developed in the last few years, although I was always passionate about mountains, but in a different way. Yeah.
Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the mountains, but not really. I wasn't really on glaciers a lot when I was a smaller kid. But I do remember that ever since that first time that I was on a glacier, walking on a glacier, that I had a very special feeling about that kind of a landscape. There was something mystical about it, something that moved me somewhere, and I didn't really know what it was for a long time. And a lot of times when we're mountaineering, we don't really have a lot of time on the glacier because we try to like get somewhere. And so for me, a very critical moment was when I traversed the Alps from east to west. I was in the Adler region, which is still one of my favorite glaciated areas. Also, the picture behind me is from that area. And I finally had time to really feel into what it is that moves me about this landscape. And what I realized is something that still strikes me today every time I get there, and that's the fact that I think glaciers have this beautiful ambivalence of being massive, scary almost, ancient, full of wisdom, full of almost brutality in a shape of a landscape, but at the same time being so fragile, being melting, being moving, being in motion all the time, changing all the time, and dying right now, that I think this ambivalence of fragility and power, strength, was something that really struck me. And I think it struck me because I realized that it's something that I feel is also very human. This ambivalence is something that I would definitely say that I carry within myself, this kind of two sides. And yeah, I think for me, the glaciers are important because they inspired me to try and live openly in this ambivalence of being sensitive and at the same time being strong, and that it's not a contradiction.
I think you said something very interesting because you said the word moving and in motion, and then you said they're dying right now, which really makes us realize how alive they are. And if anyone is watching us and is interested in the topic but hasn't had the chance yet to see a glacier or walk on a glacier, when you're on a glacier, there is tons of noise. It's moving. It's like it's literally alive under the feet, and it's something that is very impressive. And you hear like sound that resonates and cracks, and it's like it's a full living organism. Like there is something happening, and I think that makes us more sensitive to the landscape when we witness that as well. So I think it's a very important thing. And the fact that you said they're dying, it is the situation, and it's alarming, and it's getting very, very, very fast. So we'll go back on this later, but I think that was an important thing to tap on. Tobias, photographer Tobias, what was your first memory with a glacier way before you started to take pictures of them?
So my passion started about 8 years ago. Like I've been on glaciers before that. I went skiing on glaciers in wintertime, but you know, in winter it's all covered in snow. So like you don't really see the glacier. And 8 years ago, I saw my first big glacier during summertime. And I was just blown away by like the size, the structures and its beauty. And back then I knew I want to photograph them. But at that moment, I didn't realize like how bad the situation is, that glaciers are dying. You know, you're talking of the eternal ice, but it's not eternal anymore. Like we're going to lose it soon. So like over the years, I noticed that I want to do something about it. And that's how I started my project, Melting Giants, which just documents the melting of glaciers.
Thank you. And how the community and how the traditional relationship between alpine communities and glaciers kind of like started and shaped our local culture in the Alps. So this question is more for the other Tobias.
I can try. It's also actually not my expertise in that sense, but for sure, and also we're have more a connection with the mountain sports. But there is very famous drawings and pictures from, for example, from the Ötztal Alps, which were like for a time where the glaciers were actually advancing. So you see drawings of a glacier that looks like a dragon or like a monster, with the front, like where they're normally there, where the water comes out. That's like the mouth of a monster, and I'm showing that kind of like actually at that time it was a threat. So this ice up there was not a romantic vision of a nice surface that I can ski or look at. It was a threat because it was throwing down rocks. It was floods coming down. It was endangering a whole town actually. And also there was extreme events. So there was when glaciers retreated from the 1850s, the last ice age or last little ice age, the maximum stage of the glaciers in the Alps, they formed lakes. So one of the big lake outbursts, so a big flood that came down, was that glacier that was drawn like a monster and destroyed a village, the Vernachtferner, in the Ötztal Alps. So I mean, so that is a very original relation to a glacier, which is not romantic, which is just like there's a lot of spots marked on maps or that we know of also in the terrain that are often referred to prayer spots. So where we actually prayed that the glacier will retreat and not get closer to the village. And
Yeah.
the follow-up relation, I think, in the Alps that developed very fast towards, for example, tourism and industry with glacier skiing resorts, full all year round skiing, which is now almost actually not possible anymore. But there used to be in the 80s or 90s when they developed the ski resorts, a big thing. So yeah, I think it's a big change from this perspective of having fear or respectful to the mountains, and having that threat to using it. But maybe now also going back to being a threat, because we're actually facing quite some threats and hazards from up there right now.
There's actually a very interesting story about these glaciers that you said. They're like they were so big and people were so scared of them because they were scared that it would like increase. And back in the days, I'm not sure exactly where, but I know it was in Switzerland. So they organized those procession with like lots of prayers, and they had to call some high-ranked people from the Vatican to like change prayers and have like proper serious religious Catholic prayers to help the glaciers to retreat and ask the glacier to retreat to save people and make sure it would not touch them or it would not eat away like the villages and when the glacier was increasing. And then a few years ago, decades ago, when it's a different phenomenon, now we want the glaciers to actually keep growing and not retrieve. They were going back to started to do these processions, and they had a problem because the prayers, they were written at the Vatican because they had to ask the Pope to change the prayers officially, to change it. So it was not, they couldn't pray to have the glacier retrieve anymore, but they actually asked to have the prayer that asked to have the glacier growing and getting bigger again. So I think it was interesting to see how big it was back in the day that it had to go all the way to the Pope to officially change prayers in Italy. So that's an interesting story. I would like to ask the other Tobias, how do you capture the story of change in a single image, and what is the power of art for this?
Yeah, good question. I actually find it not that easy to like tell the whole story in just one image, because like it's like such a diverse topic with so many infos, and that's why I'm still thinking about how to get the perfect picture to tell it in just one single image. I myself, I like to include the element of meltwater in images to like show the melting of the ice. But I believe it's even better to use multiple images instead of just one image to tell like the whole story, especially for people who don't live at the Alps, who maybe have not seen a glacier yet, they don't really understand, okay, where was the glacier? Is it actually melting? Is it good? Is it bad? So I believe it's better to use multiple images to tell the story. Yeah.
Thank you. And have you witnessed some engagement that were interesting with your pictures and getting people more curious, or maybe that would enable action or things like this? Do you have some examples of that?
Yeah, especially photographs with human aspects in it, like in glacier skiing resorts during summertime when they're working on the ice, they're like destroying the ice to fix the lift stations, or like in early winter time when there used to be enough snow to go skiing up there. Now there's not enough snow and the ice retreated. So it looks like there's only like small bands of snow and ice where they ski on. Especially so, those pictures resonate well with my audience. And of course, also I'm doing comparison pictures. And of course, those pictures also gain a lot of attention when people actually see, okay, the ice was here last year and now it's here. And also photographs showing the vastness and the beauty of glaciers also get a lot of attention, especially from people who maybe have not seen glaciers yet.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Michele if we could actually go back on the present situation in the Alps. So maybe your expertise and your research playground is more in Italy, but can you tell us a little bit more about the current situation and what we could be expecting in the next few years to see and witness in terms of maybe consequences or even catastrophes linked to the melting glaciers?
Well, what I can say is that in the future, it's not easy to predict how it will evolve because there are lots of parameters to take into account. So we have some model that based on different climatic scenarios, they try to reconstruct the volume of the glaciers, projecting it to the year, I don't know, 2050 to 2100, I don't know, at the end of the century. But they work and sometimes they are really, really helpful to communicate the message that according to different climate scenarios, the glaciers will react accordingly. Moving on to the first part of your question related to the current situation, we can say that the melting rates increased a lot, in particular in the last 13 years. Since the end of the last century in particular. And we can say that last year, for the 2023, because for last year the data it's not still published by the Italian Glaciological Committee, but in the bulletin of the 2023, we can see that all the glaciers that were studied, or approximately every glacier that was studied in Italy, suffered a strong contraction. Either it was in area contraction or terminus retreat. And we can also say that the situation it's unpredictable in terms in the future, because it not only depends on the climate scenario, but also on how the environment surrounding the glaciers will react. Because, for example, we also have to take into account the melting rates that are announced by the albedo reduction of our glacier. And albedo is influenced by the amount of debris that we have on our glacier. Debris comes from different sources, but one of these it's the rockfall activity that spread some thin debris on the glaciers, reducing the albedo and enhancing the melting. On the contrary, so it's okay that we have to predict the climate scenarios of the Alps in the future, but it's also necessary to take into account the surface properties of our glacier. And I can say that it will be important to understand the triggering factor, for example, of rockfalls, and then we will work again on the surface properties to understand the situation, because it's a system. The glacier, it's to close. We can say that the glacier is a system. It's not enough to say that okay, the terminus it's retreat, the area is contracting. We have to take into account different parameters together, and unluckily the situation it's really negative.
Thank you. And to follow up on that, I have a question for Tobias. Is there like historical record from the Alpine Club that are also valuable and can help research scientists, like climate scientists? Do you collaborate together sometimes?
Yeah, we do. So not us, the German Alpine Club in that sense, but the Austrian Alpine Club, which started at some point we were one club, but now the Austrian Alpine Club is doing the glacier observation monitoring for the Austrian glaciers. So they're measuring every summer, they're measuring the position of the glacier lobes or the fronts. So it's not a mass balance measurement, but just measuring the retreat length each summer. So that's a valuable, and you're catching me off guard how when we started, but it's a historical service that the Alpine Club has, and it's valuable data. And so there's a collaboration, and what I'm always proud or happy that I can use is our archives, which is large and which can be accessed online actually, where you can access a lot of historical photos from the Alps. So obviously, like for example, our huts were built always, or many of them in that time frame where the glaciers were at its largest size. So they're often located very next to the glacier 100 years ago, and nowadays often they're up high somewhere in a rocky terrain. So yeah, there we see a lot of historical pictures that we have from that time in all our mountain range. But there will be, we'll come back to that later, I guess. But the future will hold a lot more cooperation with science, actually, for us, for sure, because we need science to actually adapt to the new world out there.
Yeah, I can imagine. And also you said something, you have some archive, but also the glaciers as well are the archives of like humankind in a way. As we all know, like all the research about climate science is also based on like CO2 emissions and things like that. And all these information are carried and kept and preserved into the ice. So it's an amount, like an exceptional amount of information and data for humans as well to understand the past and to understand the future, and also find ways to adapt and protect ourselves as a human species. Anna, I would like to also ask you a question about the approach on the environmental issues. Like, is there some early signs that the mountaineers or the outdoor industry have seen or maybe ignored? Is there some things that you can tell us about in terms of like I would say the more athlete or outdoor industry? What was seen in the last decades?
Well, I think it's interesting because you get a very different picture when you talk to, let's say, a mountain guide who's guided in the Alps for the past 50, 60 years, which there are still a few, because they oftentimes, on one hand, have a bit of a less sentimental approach because they have always seen changes, and of course they some more, some less acknowledge the fact of climate change being anthropogenic, or the effects being caused by us. But in general, I've talked to many older guides, and I kind of like their overall approach, saying, okay, there have always been changes. We see that those changes have drastically taken up speed in the last years. But who knows, maybe, I don't know, maybe the lakes that will be created once the glaciers are gone will also be nice, like, so they have this more of a matter-of-factly way of looking at it. And I find that inspiring too, talking about the ski industry, or that is a different topic, because to be honest, the glaciers in the Alps, I mean, first, we are losing them. There's no way back. now. It's not like it's not like a train that will stop, because even if we hit the brakes to zero now, the glaciers in the Alps are still going to be gone. So I think the fact that we can understand that they are a very strong but a mere symbol of what's happening globally, that's where the actual strength lies in them as a power. And I think that maybe is a good transition to the ski industry, because I think that as a representative also for POW, I realize that a lot of people have become climate advocates because of their experiences in the mountains, because they see what's happening, because the changes are so drastic. They see what's happening to the places they love, the places that are almost part of their identities, if you're really passionate about it. And that moves them. And I think emotion is a very powerful force to actually start even activism or rage, or just the will to do something. And I think that is something that hasn't even stopped when looking at the outdoor industry. I think in the outdoor industry, obviously there are a lot of people working in the outdoor industry who are also very passionate about nature. Of course, they're at the same time, they're interested in growth, they're interested in making money, because that's part of the deal. But at the same time, if you compare it to maybe some other industries, we still have an industry that is driven a lot by people who care a lot for the places that they sell to. So I think that is an important factor, which is not to say that enough is happening in the outdoor industry, but I do feel that for the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, there has definitely been a shift. There's been a shift towards sustainability. In some ways, also greenwashing, of course, but in general, I think that the trend of looking at climate change, of looking at sustainability as a whole, I much prefer this trend from a former trend that was all about higher, lighter, faster. So I think even if for some it's not a true goal, I think in general we can still profit from this trend of also in the outdoor industry of being more aware. And it's not just a trend, it's definitely more than that.
And also, is there some specific species or ecosystems that you witness the most change around the glaciers, especially during the summer season? Is there something that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, as people who move around the glaciers in the summer, we just know that it gets more dangerous in some places, that yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, for me personally, I can say that every time I visit Ortla, which is, as I said, one of my favorite mountains, it just hurts to see how much is gone again. And in general, of course, there are very symbolic aspects of how climate change is impacting also the nature. Like there's one example that I really like, that's the white hare, so the snow rabbit, as they would call it in German, that is just dying out because it's obviously got the wrong color now. So the natural predators can see it if it's running around in a dark area. And I think this is just a very clear and symbolic image, but of course there's a lot of the flora and fauna that is changing insanely, and some of it is dying out, and that's part of this change in the Alps. But again, I think it's very important to consider that we're talking about, if we're talking about glaciers, the Alps are such a minimal part of what's happening with the glaciers worldwide.
Indeed. I have a question for Tobias, our photographer. Have you seen a lot of change, or have you witnessed lots of change even in the way that you approach your photography since you started in the last 8 years because of the situation, even maybe just to adapt for safety reasons or things like that?
Oh yeah, I saw a lot of change. Of course, I saw Glacier Retreat. Even like I visited one glacier a few weeks after I went there before, and I saw the retreat only in a few weeks. I also saw my first glacier disappear, or like maybe it wasn't a glacier anymore. Maybe it was already that small that it was called toad ice. I don't know the English term. but it disappeared now. Like I went there 3 years ago and it was still like 150 meters long. And last year I went there and was like only one small ice block of like 2 meters. And that's gone now forever. And that's what makes me really, really sad. And of course, I see more rockfall, and I witnessed a couple of smaller landslides. Yeah, it's just getting more dangerous up there. Some old pathways are not possible anymore because like you normally have to go over the glacier, and now it's too small, and you're not able to go that way anymore. So yeah, a lot of things are changing up there, and it's really, really sad.
And to tap into the safety aspect of it, Michele, how has the changing alpine landscape affected the safety of people who are practicing outdoor activities, or even villages who live in those valley pretty close to glaciers? What's the situation now? What are we looking for in like the very near future?
It's an interesting question, also because, as I said before, it's important to create data in this field of studies, because it's a new situation and sometimes we don't have lots of data to rely on. I can say that last year I was part of a research conducted between the University of Milan and EURAC Research in Bolzano, and we tried to analyze the situation of the rockfalls occurred near the glaciers in Vinschgau, in Val Venosta, so in South Tyrol. And we observed that there are more or less around 500 events in different size, of course, but lots of them are intersecting alpine paths, alpine routes. So it creates consequences for alpinists and for people who would like to visit these environments. And now, and I think that in the future, as I said before, the challenge is to understand better the triggering factor, because of course we have permafrost degradation, but also some degradation in the mechanical properties of the rocks are involved. So the situation is really complex. And it's not only confined on high altitude areas, on alpine routes, for example, but it influences also, for example, as you said, the situation for villages. While you were talking, an example came to my mind, and it's related to Aosta Valley in the Mont Blanc Massif. Here we have the Plampin-Sieu Glacier, which is on a very, very steep slope of a mountain. And because of the dynamic of this glacier, sometimes there are small or big collapses, and they need to close the road. In the valley, there is also a small village just below this glacier, and of course the block of ice fall near this village, and sometimes they need to close the road and the access to this valley, because now, I mean, now they can close in advance because there is a monitoring system using radar technology that can monitor even the smaller movement of this block of ice, and also and then I mean they protect the population living there. But in general, yes, the point is not only to study the glacier, the extension of these glaciers, but also the surrounding of this, because okay, maybe for some people that are listening now or will listen to this panel, maybe they are not really interested about the snoot fluctuations of a glacier or the albedo properties, but maybe they are more interested in knowing if they are safe when they are crossing a plateau or a circo glacier. So the challenge also for us as researcher, and also for the monitoring service of Lombardia, will be to understand this new situation and be ready to understand the situation and provide that data.
Is it increasing, and in terms of numbers of events?
Yeah, it's increasing because, as I said, the triggering factors is permafrost degradation, but also mechanical properties. I was focusing on the mechanical properties of the rocks during my last research. You have to imagine that the glacier act as a making pressure on the mountain side, and it creates like a stress on this. But as soon as a glacier disappear, this stress is released in the form of rockfalls and landslides. So the glaciers are thinning, so more mountain rocks are exposed to air temperature and in general to the weather condition. And this I mean, it's an enhancement of the risk of rockfalls. And then adding just one thing to the previous question, the risk is not only for glaciers or for rockfalls on glacier, which technically it's called the paraglacial activity, but the situation it's also on the glacier. We can think about the Marmolada collapse happening 2 or 3 years ago, in between Trentino and Veneto, and there, because of the dynamics of the glacier and the strong melting during the summer season, a massive block of ice detached from the main body of it, and I mean, many people lost their life that day. So it's going to be more risky for us to work on glaciers and also for tourists.
Thank you. Tobias, how are local communities adapting in terms of with these glaciers condition and those challenges and those safety risk? Is there anything that that you're doing in your work with the Alpine Club to help this adaptation, or even to raise more awareness for the local communities to really understand and take the risk seriously, or are they really aware of it?
Well, yeah, first of all, maybe coming back to what Michele said, where everything is pointed out nicely, that the processes that happen in the mountain, in the high mountain, and the speed is challenging us extremely, like as an Alpine Club in that sense. Because like to make it practical, like nowadays we don't know, for example, our professional guides, it's very hard to tell them the conditions that are currently out there. These conditions on a glacier, they can change within days in the summer. So, for example, a glacier tongue in the lower elevation can easily lose 8 to 10 meters of ice, 4 meters of ice in one summer. And that can happen within 1 or 2 months, depending on the temperature and the heat waves that we had in the past. So for a long time, kind of like these systems were kind of stable. Like 1900 to 1960s, 70s, there was glacier retreat already, but all the big ice faces, they were still fairly stable. They were fairly big, but the acceleration that we had from the 1990s, 2000s to now is high speed acceleration, and at the moment we cannot really predict the conditions to that much, because we have extreme weather events changing from normal temperature to 0 degree line at 4,500, 5,000 meters, so really hot. And then we have retreats of glaciers of 50 meters within a couple of days or weeks. So that prediction is really difficult. But adaptation, so we need adaptation, obviously, but currently we're still, unfortunately, at the beginning to develop more like spatial-wide forecast systems, including new technologies, or not new technologies in that sense, but now we're having a lot of live data from sort of satellites available that can be used sort of as near live information from space, but from the Alps sort of. So this needs to be included. To sum it up, we're super aware and super challenged, all the Alpine clubs or everybody who's out there in Alpine environment, but we're not there yet to being able to predict.
And
The advantage, when you said, just a quick add-on, because you said communities. So one thing that's really a danger actually is what also Michele said, is that these events of seracs or ice towers falling down due to meltwater lakes within the ice or before the ice is an actual threat. The thing is that we probably in the Alps are in a luxurious position being able to monitor these things, most likely. So yeah, but if we look, for example, to the Himalayas or Andes or whatever, if a big glacier like this falls off, or a big moraine lake that has not been monitored comes down, then we're talking about thousands of people.
Yeah.
So I think the adaptation
Thousands.
process for us in the Alps is manageable. That's doable. We are having higher risk, but we can develop tools. We can develop live information very soon, I'm sure. But yeah, the big challenges lie a bit in other mountain regions, I think.
And is there misconceptions that you encounter sometimes with the local communities, or even when you're discussing those topics with the public?
Misconceptions. I don't think so, really. Like quick out of my head, I think that now that the challenge is really seen. So the one thing is the hazard, but the other thing that's actually more important when you talk about community and economy is water. So now we have been for sure on the safe side saying that the Alps are the watershed or the water tower of Europe. But so for example, for inner regions like the Ötztal, which are, or the Finchgau, which is fairly dry, it's not that much precipitation. The glaciers that are gone actually plus heat waves will cause water shortage. So that's a thing now that we'll have to face or think about. So I think that's one thing that communities in the valleys are starting to realize, that resources are not endless. They're not just there where we can use them. It's as we used to. So there's a big change.
Yeah,
And that, I mean, that's where also the whole ski industry topic comes in, because if we have an industry that can also be very water intense, when you talk about artificial production of artificial snow and so on, then we do get to a point where we have to, yeah, like we have to pick our battles. And definitely the water aspect will be a topic that, where sometimes now I'm very surprised that it's not much bigger of a topic now. I
Yeah.
think it's starting to be more of a bigger topic, but I think, yeah, that's definitely something, like, I mean, obviously everybody talks about the melting of the glaciers, which makes sense, but at the same time, keeping in mind that that's water.
Yes, the
that's running off.
consequences.
And that's like, you don't have to be a scientist to understand that one is connected to the other. But in the public sphere, I still find it surprising how little of a topic that is,
But
what it means for our water supply. Yeah.
yeah, and I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of like education around like all the water system, because I think for most people who have never heard about glaciers before, it's like, yes, glaciers are made of ice and it's water. Then there is water we get in our sink, but the connection is not really understood or as simple as it seems when we don't know a glacier. And to go back to the water, there is also some region like in the Chamonix Valley where power also depends on water. And that's something that people have to think about, because it's like, do we want to keep developing ski seasons and assure economic safety for everyone? Or do we want electricity in 20 years? Or do we want water in 30 years? That's kind of like the questions we're facing right now. How is an organization like PAL like addressing these questions? They're like more technical through that perspective of like outdoor and with the help of the athletes.
Can you, I'm not 100% sure what the question is.
Oh, the question is like, in terms of like these very tough consequences we're going to be facing. Is there anything that, or any programs that POW is developing with athletes or people in the outdoor industry doing at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, there are always campaigns ongoing. POW is obviously, we're an international NGO. We act in many, many countries around the world. 10 of them are in Europe. And I'm I work for POW Germany, so we focus mostly on the German topics or anything that's alpine, alpine in the sense of the Alps. And obviously, I mean, a topic that we discuss a lot is the future of, when it comes to the winter season, is the future of skiing and whether it's justifiable to, I don't know, to invest a lot of money into building artificial lakes that can feed the machines that create the artificial snow. So in general, I think what I appreciate also about how we work with POW is that we don't usually give easy answers, or because there just are none. And especially when it comes to the topic of climate change versus sometimes climate protection versus sometimes nature restoration, you need to really look at the factors, that the local factors, to understand what's important in what region. So I think that's like a very complex thing to dive into, and it's really necessary to look at the local situations that you have at hand. But in general, I can say that there are certainly there are certainly topics like, for example, as we also represent professional sports, there is, for example, the FIS, which is the International Federation for Skiing, for the professional skiing competitions worldwide. That is definitely something where we try with our athletes, actually it started with one athlete from POW Austria who said, wait, we are flying back and forth. Can't we do something about this massive CO2 emissions that we're creating as professional athletes? And I think that's where it's really powerful to be working with professional athletes from all, not just from the winter sports sector, but from all the outdoors, because they can have a very powerful voice as people who are very emotionally close to nature. And at the same time, they have a lot of times more than we would think know-how of what's actually happening, and they can be very, very effective advocates and very important factors in trying to push the message in places where it's necessary, because people listen to them more sometimes than they would listen to others. And yeah, I think they have a very credible voice, and it's great. That's why it's great to work with them, and that's why I think that they're very effective. And yes, I mean, there are always campaigns ongoing. I don't know if it's the European elections, where we had a big international campaign last year with POW, where we presented a manifesto. Or in Germany, we had the national elections this year, and we had a big campaign on that. So we also do try to dive into political work and then do that with the support of our Athlete Alliance.
And is there any one simple thing that you could invite visitors who are going to the Alps, or maybe not, pro athletes or used to the mountain outdoor sports? Is there things that they could do to help protecting glaciers? Or
Well, I
if
mean,
they
in
wanted
general,
to get involved with POW?
if you consider protecting glaciers, not just in the Alps, but in general, that protecting glaciers means being like climate friendly, then there's one number that's very that sticks, which is when you go on vacation in the Alps, then 70% of your CO2 emissions are usually created by the way that you get there. Because most people take the car, and it doesn't really matter from where, but of course it makes a difference if you get in a car in, say, Hamburg or the Netherlands, and then you're by yourself in the car, or maybe with one other person. It makes a huge difference if you decide to take the train. And I mean, we always try to also stress, and this is something that I say from my own experience, also as an athlete, where I don't know, I did expeditions where I traveled solely with public transportation to get there, even in the Caucasus Mountains. And I must say that it's such a great way to get around, because you get in touch with local cultures more. So in general, yeah, and you see the landscape changing, you see what's going on. And if it's a trip to the Alps, for example, then I don't know, if you want to have a beer after your ski trip, then you can do that, and you can't do that in a car. You can avoid traffic jams and all of that. So I think what I would like to invite people to do when they consider their next trip into the mountains is to look at the positive side of what they can do for the climate. And I'm not just saying because it feels good to be living more climate friendly, but also because it feels so much better to be on a train than in a traffic jam.
So needless to say that any heli skiing experience should be banned.
Yes, I mean, I personally would definitely say so. I think that, yes, I think that there's definitely in the Alps, it's not necessary to do that, I don't think. But also with this, I think it's very important to say that it's not about prohibiting something. It's not about banning heli skiing for anybody. It's about understanding why it's important to do other things. You know, like I think it's so, in the whole climate debate, it's so crucial to try and stress the positive aspects of things instead of the negative aspects. It's so important to understand how it's good to do good things, and not just to understand how we have to avoid doing the bad things, because good things make us feel good. So I think, I mean, it sounds very simple, but actually it kind of is. So I think it's like it really makes sense to, I don't know, be motivated by the good things that we can do. And on the other hand, you know, I would even say if there's a person whose dream in life is to go heli skiing once, and it will make them so happy, and it will make them understand nature in a way that that person hasn't understood it before, or whatever, you know, then I wouldn't judge that person for doing it, because I think it's all about the balance. It's all about like understanding what's important to you and why, and asking yourself that question, and asking yourself all those questions responsibly. And I don't know, sometimes it's just about reconsidering what you're used to, and whether what you're used to is really the best.
Re-questioning what we normalized.
Yep.
Tobias, I have a question for you. Do local policies and community actions in the Alpine regions, they help when it comes to glacier preservation, or is it more on a global scale?
Well, if we talk about conservation, maybe also Michele's topic, then like later on the scientific part. But if we talk about conservation, I think we have to make sure clear that conservation in the Alps is not really possible anymore. I mean, Anna said it. So conservation in that sense is climate mitigation, so CO2 reduction. But for the Alps, the glaciers cannot be saved, unfortunately. We're already in a climate that's way above the state where a glacier can survive. But so that issue, conservation for glaciers, is a global issue, which is very important. So if we any CO2 reduction that we do now, or if we get on the right path to the 1.5 or the 2 degrees emission scenario, which we are not right now, means we can save, I think it was 80% of the global glaciers, and that's where it counts. So that is where the sea level rise comes from. That is where big water resources lie for the Andes, the Himalayas, where millions of people and big cities that depend on. So that's where global climate mitigation issues, measures, climate policies will come in as the big priority number one from my point of view. And municipalities in the valleys, I think they are starting, but they have to obviously also start the adaptation process in terms of, for example, ski resorts, which constructions in terms of water use are still allowed. This is also then comes to the regional governments, so the country of Tyrol or Austria that have to say where is the limit of water use. But unfortunately, as an individual, the limit it is limited, and as communities in the Alps, the loss of glacier cannot be be stopped, but we have in that case like more of a global duty that we have to do.
Yeah, and I think that's
Right.
something that we really need to stress out is like it might not change the glaciers we have in front of us in the Alps when we're there, but the action that we will take in the Alps, like Anna said, being careful with transportation has an impact on the glacier on the other side of the world in a very, very big way and very like a strong way. Anna?
There's actually a really nice example that I always like to quote from Ben Matsayon, a scientist. He said, or he researched that every kilogram of CO2 that we're emitting at the present day will eventually be responsible for melting between 10 and 20 kilograms of glacier. So if you have a more or less average car and you're an average driver, you would have emitted something like 200 grams of CO2 for every kilometer you go. And that would then translate to something like 3 kilograms of ice lost for every kilometer that you move your car. So just like having that in your mind, like 3 kilograms of ice, try and carry 3 kilograms of ice and then consider that for every kilometer. I find that pretty inspiring as a striking, as a good reason to take a different means of transportation.
I think it's a very interesting metaphor, and it actually makes it like feasible for people to understand and to really get like what it means. And especially it's like 3 kilos of ice plus 3 kilos of ice plus 3 kilos of ice eventually becomes a tiny glacier, eventually with a full nation becomes a massive glacier. And when we know we didn't really tap into it, but the consequences of the Arctic or Antarctica melting, we're reaching some tipping point at the moment, and when the entire system will accelerate, the consequences are on billions of people around the world. This is not like a small topic in very small remote region. This is a global scale issue. So I think it will take all of us, and every little things we can do can change, even if it's changing the life of 2 people. I think that's enough to sleep well at night. Tobias, I wanted to go back with you on I had a question about innovation. Have you seen some innovative adaptation lately?
Related to the impacts of climate change in the Alps.
Yes.
That's a very broad question. I can come back a little bit that we're already adapting.
But if you had like one example that could inspire other communities around the world or even in the Alps.
It's not on the sort of practical service level yet, but we're definitely there that the sort of like in science when it comes to rockfall, landslide, big rock slides, that we're getting closer to predicting these events to a time frame where it actually can be used to, for example, be in time to block a road or a trail. So there's one research project that we hopefully work on with the Technical University in Munich and trying to put these out in Alpine wide or starting forecasts. So this is not in use yet, but with all the data that we have, with all AI coming in, etc., this will be a matter of time where we can at least sort of predict things like the Fluchthorn or the in the Bergell, the big failures, and save lives. So I'm hoping that this is coming. The standard thing that's bound to happen as an adaptation is our spatial planning that is based on sort of wrong data at the moment, because as I mentioned, the time is so fast. So a 100-year flood event is now already turning into a 10-year repeat cycle. So what we used to have once in 100 years is now happening already once in 10 years. So all the hazard zones are changing. So adaptation is also there a point of spatial planning simply. Not innovative, but you simply have to change the zones where you're allowed to build and settle and put a railroad.
Thank you. The other Tobias, the photographer, I have a question about your photography before we head to the closing questions, because time is running fast. I wanted to see with you how you balance showing beauty through your pictures and showing destruction, and what in what way you balance this? And then is there anything that resonate most strongly with your audience?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, working on such a sad topic, it's sometimes tough for me. Like I get like in a negative downward spiral and focusing too much on negative effects. But I think it's important to show both sides, like the beauty side that people, there's that saying, people only protect what they know and love. So I think it's important to show the beauty of glaciers and what we are losing, so they understand that we're going to lose that. Like in 20 or 30 years, we won't see it anymore. But I think it's also important on the other side, on the other hand, to show the sad state of our glaciers. They are dying right now, and you have to show that to people, or they understand the urgency of they have to act now. There's not time to sit back and relax, but we have to do something now. And that's why you have to show both sides. And yeah, sometimes I drift too much to the negative side, but I always try to like make it like 50-50 and show both.
Thank you. And now for all of you, what would you like to tell future generations about the Alps that we knew before?
Well, I can say that one important part of the work of our association, it's not only related to the monitoring of the glacier during the summer, but also to the education throughout the year. We are every month we meet different students around Lombardy, and we try to teach them and show them the impact of climate change. And what I would like them to learn, it's that they are fragile. So every small action counts. And so as we were talking about public transports before, this strategy that we could apply to fight this situation. Yeah, I agree, because what we try to give the students is the idea that the main enemy that we have to fight is the use of fossil fuel and the greenhouse gases. So only if we reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we can protect our glacier. And so the idea is that they have to learn that they are fragile. They are now melting because something changed throughout the last decades, but it's not said, but because it's not said because we can invert this trend, and who knows in the future what will happen. Of course, the trends from scientists are really bad. The projections are really bad, but we also like to give them a little bit of hope for the future. At least if it's not in the Alps, maybe in the Andes or in the Himalaya, we will save some glacier. But the most important thing is that we save these kind of resources. Yeah.
And what's one concrete action that one of you would like our viewers to take after watching this discussion, apart from transport that we talked about?
Join POW wherever you are.
You know what to do, guys.
Yeah,
And
I
also
think
check out Tobias' work and his photography. There
yeah,
is
of
very,
course.
yeah, the website is really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to use your voice and tell others about the situation and the consequences and make them aware. I think many people don't even really know about it, because like people who don't live near the Alps, they don't really know about it. So I think it's important to spread the word, use your voice, go vote, and yeah, live climate friendly, not only on vacation, but do the best you can. You don't have to be perfect, but do the things you can do.
Yeah, and I think that's so great about this topic, that going out there is actually really, really important, because like what Tobias also said, like we protect what we love, we protect the things that we cherish, and that's why it's important to go out there to see what's there to be protected, and then to do something about it. And also, I would really like to motivate people not to be demotivated by the feeling of being alone, being alone or thinking as an individual, I can't do anything. It's not enough to act as an individual, of course, but still, for the feeling of optimism, it's very important, I think, that's also my personal experience. I feel more optimistic when I do something, and this contributes not only to my own personal decisions, but also towards the systemic change that we need, because it's not enough if we as individuals change our individual behavior. Of course, we need a change on a much, much bigger scale, but we also have a way to impact these bigger scales. And I think that's why, like, it doesn't have to be POW. Join any group that you can join, because if you do something like that together, it's not only empowering, it's also more effective. And I think that's like, yeah, I find that really important, and it's also something that gives me a lot of hope for the future when talking about such a sometimes depressing topic. The hope comes from getting together, motivating each other, experiencing the outdoors, and then saying, okay, what can we do? Let's do it.
Yeah, and some people might connect more with the outdoor or like the athlete aspect of it, athleticism. Some
And I mean,
people
we're all
might
not
connect.
nobody's perfect, like Tobias said, we don't have to pretend that we
Yeah,
can do everything. We can't. All of us have flaws that are not even flaws. It's just that's how life is right now, where we live in a society where we do not live perfectly climate friendly. And that's what
exactly.
hold us back from being active.
And this is why it's nice to have like such different experts on this panel, because some might connect more with like the mission of POW, for example. Some might be more resonating with art and with the work of Tobias, or some might connect more with the environmental protection of the other Tobias or Michele's work and through his studies. And I think that everyone has a little something that is unique that can tap into through all the organizations and foundations that we have out there. So really, like, you can check out our experts, and I'm sure if you reach out to them or their organization, you will also maybe meet a full community of people, and then it's the domino effect as well. And then is there anything that Tobias Hipp you wanted to say, or Michele?
Yeah, I think it's just well, I mean, it's very positive that now the year of the glacier preservation is causing so much attention, using the glacier as a symbol once more from the Alps. But I think what's always important, not getting depressed is one thing about it, but I think the challenges are actually in the Alps. Also biodiversity and keeping up the biodiversity ecosystem services. Losing the glacier is one thing, but the big challenges that lie ahead are actually potentially bigger than losing the sort of like the wide surface that we have so much attached to. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind, and knowing that this is really like 10 years ago we said the clock is ticking, it's 5 minutes to 12 or something, but now we've passed this. So to save these ecosystems, for example, the biodiversity, that is really the point to act now also. And there I'm really, yeah, addressing legislation, legal administrations, EU government to do so.
And to end up on a high note, is there something that gives you hope about the future of the Alps, even though it might be a future without ice on it?
For sure, yeah. I don't see it. I think it's a very like romantic picture that we have. It's changing. I'm also sad that I see walls that I have climbed as my first test piece, and they're now bare rock instead of ice. Yeah, it's sad. But on the same time, we have to see the positive sides. Yeah, I mean, climbing or mountain biking, hiking season is getting longer. We can go up higher without being exposed to glacier crevasses. There will still be skiing. It will be different. We have to carry the skis a bit higher on the grass or on bare ground to reach the snow, etc.
That's
But
part
I
of the
think
sport. It's a workout.
as long as we adapt to these new circumstances and adapt this, if we talk about sport and leisure and free time enjoyment, if we adapt to it and not like look back and be sad about how it used to be, then I think it will be very also positive aspects of this change if we adapt correctly and act now. And because if we don't act now, actually, then systems and processes can be quite dramatic, which we now, I don't know, Michele, maybe you're closer. I'm also in Torino. I'm in Torino right now, and I'm watching the weather forecast of a snow and rainfall event coming in that is, I don't think, has many that I have never seen before in that extent, in the amount. So these extreme events are coming more and more. Yeah.
Michele, do you want to end?
I just wanted to
question?
say that, just to a quick add-on is that for us scientists, maybe in the future we won't have the big white masses covering our mountains, but at least maybe we will have some rock glaciers to study, and of course the environment will be different, the colors will be different, but maybe the dynamic, a very similar dynamic will remain. Who knows? And the situation in the Alps, there are some precipitation coming these days. Apparently, the problem as last year is that these are late precipitation, so there are some problems related to the snow metamorphism and snow accumulation that won't allow it to last long. And if we add also the presence of Sahara dust on it, changing the color of the surfaces and enhancing the melting, okay, you can be happy that finally some snow will arrive on our Alps, but from a glaciological point of view, it's late during this year. And again, to close, I would like to say that the most important thing is to first to know the situation from a theoretical point of view, but also from a landscape from point of view more in general, and then to act. And when you have to act, you have to recognize that as you learned, that the main problem is the greenhouse gases, the enhancement of the combustion of fossil fuel. So just think about your lifestyle, and if it's possible to act climate friendly, please just do it, because it will save our lives. Yes.
Thank you. And just before I give the mic to Connie to close this panel, I just wanted to add also maybe one action that we can do is because we often think of what we can do to stop climate change or to slow the process of climate change with increased temperature, but also global warming. But I think there is one simple thing that we can do is to prevent consequences as well, or like the cost of the consequences, and especially with melting glacier, it will be water scarcity in the future. And there is things that we can do which are very simple, like shopping and what we buy. Electronics are made with water. AI is using water. A shirt is using water. It's a few liters of water to make one shirt, and maybe all those liters of water are very important to save. So that can be a tiny action we can do every day of refraining us to just do one thing. We're like, oh, I'm about to do this, and it's like, do I need to do this? Maybe no, I'm happy already. Let's save the water. So Connie, here is your time now. Thank you for coming back with us.
Yeah, thank you all so much. This was very, very enlightening, very interesting. And although the topic is not always so beautiful and reminiscent of the beautiful landscapes that we were talking about, but also about, of course, the dire situation that these landscapes find themselves in, and the future that in some ways looks quite bleak. I'm very, very happy about all of your insights, all of your perspectives, and seeing the different sides that we were all able to witness in this panel discussion here. So a big thank, of course, to the panelists, to everybody who's participated here on the panel. Another big thanks, of course, for Leslie for moderating this panel. It was a pleasure to follow along, and it was really interesting and engaging. Of course, a big thank you also to everybody who was viewing in the live stream, and for everybody who is viewing this after the fact, of course, as well. A special thanks goes out to Maurice, who has been doing the technical support for the live stream. It's a really, really big task, and everything went really smoothly, and that's not always the case. So that was also a big applause, a big round of applause. And then, of course, the thanks also to the supporters and members of Glacierwatch who've been able to make this happen, who prepared for this panel discussion, and who helped in making sure that people knew about this. And of course, for everybody who cares deeply about the Alps and about the glaciers all around us. Maybe one of the two things that you can do from the perspective of Glacierwatch, you can of course check out our website, which is glacierwatch.eu, where you can find our under construction glacier database that we're building up bit by bit with information about glaciers from all across Europe. We also have articles on that website. All of that is happening as in progress. So we're constantly working on it and improving it and adding to it. And of course, you can also become a supporter or even a member of Glacierwatch. And of course, also to the other organizations that have been represented here. And you can support the individual artists, such as Tobias Büttel here, and check out his art and go to his exhibitions. And of course, check out the Lombardy, the Glaciological Service of Lombardy, and their website, and find out about what they're doing. So there are multiple ways of engaging and of becoming an active member, of making sure that the future of the Alps, while changing, doesn't have to look as bleak as sometimes it may look to us that are looking right now. Again, thank you very much. And with that, big goodbye and a wonderful good night to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.